again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything, and I'm coming back at you with another Wargaming and miniature video. In this video, we're going to be talking about my Ancients project. I am doing a variety of different projects, and I'm trying to break them up so that if you're interested in one project and not another, you don't have to watch the videos that you're not interested in. So in this video, we're going to be talking about my Roman, Carthaginian, Macedonian, ancient Gaelic, German project, right? It's all going to be done in 15 millimeter. I've decided to do my ancients in 15 millimeter. I'm going to use a fairly popular DBA style basing convention, 40 millimeter frontage on almost all units, and heavy infantry or close order infantry will be 15 millimeter depth, and the light infantry will be on 20 millimeter depth. The heavy infantry have 4 figures on a base. Medium will have 3 figures on a base, and lights will have 2 figures on a base. I don't know if you've ever come out to any of my updates in the past, but if you are, what you'll see is I will put out videos from time to time talking about my thought process, organizing my armies, talking about figures. I'll show you the models as I paint them, what units get completed. I will show you, or we'll talk about rule sets. We'll talk about a variety of different things about the project, getting myself ready to be able to run battles in that genre. Before we get started, I want to let you know I've got a number of projects running simultaneously right now. I've got my Roman project, or I should say my ancient project I got running. I've got my American War of Independence project. I've got my Napoleonic project, and I have my medieval project. Those are the eras or the time frames. Now, I also enjoy World War II, but I don't have a project running right now on World War II. I'm content right now with what I've got in my World War II collection. So we also talk about terrain, buildings, what things I've ordered, what I'm waiting for. When I get them in, I usually do reviews on them, etc., etc. So there's a lot of variety in these videos. Okay, now in today's video, this is the first official video for my Ancients project. So I want to kind of just lead it off by what got us here. Okay. In the olden days, I played Field of Glory in Ancients. I also played a game called Armadi. Armadi was just a little bit too on the basic side. It didn't really, I don't know, it just didn't have enough depth to the rules. And so I wanted to look for something with a little bit more depth, a little bit more universality, if that's a word. So I found Field of Glory, knowing that Field of Glory was an Osprey publication, and I did a lot of, and Slytherin it looks like. I have done a lot of work with Osprey and Slytherin, so I knew that these books were going to be quality. So I got the Field of Glory rules, I got some army lists, I got almost every single one of them. And these books are great because they tell you what forms a unit, you know, how many points they are they drilled, or they're not drilled, blah, blah, blah. It goes in, and then it shows you a couple of battles, usually like a starter army, and then it also talks about like a generic starter army, and then points on how to make your own army. And these books usually cover a period of time. Like this was the rise of Rome, which would be Republicans. And then, like Immortal Fire, was my Macedonians and Greeks, Persians, that time frame. And then late medievals is kind of like my Agincourt, that time frame. And that set of rules could be used for any period. Well, I started playing it. Put together some armies, played it. It felt like a tournament game. It felt like a point-based game. I don't like those games. I don't like what. Okay, let me back up. It was fun. I enjoyed it. I had a good time. I loved building those armies. But my passion is scenarios, historical battles, recreations of battles that actually transpired, because this is a historical game. I'm expecting history. I'm not expecting fictional battles or fantasy battles or hypotheticals are okay. Don't get me wrong, I like hypotheticals, but not fictional. So I basically, because now if this was a fantasy game, I would have no problem with that because there would be no history involved. But because it's a historical game, and I'm really into historical games, I like scenarios, I like recreating certain battles, Agincourt, Cannae, or I wanted to say Salamanca, but yeah, it could be Salamanca. That's Napoleonics, but Freeman's Farm, whatever. I want to recreate and see how I can do differently, or why the battle transpired a certain way, or learn what units were there and why they were there and how they were implemented, and etc., etc. But that's not it. That's not, because I could take these rules and implement scenarios using these rules. That wouldn't be a problem. It's just that playing the game felt like it was a tournament game. Anytime I went to a convention and I saw people playing Field of Glory, it was always hostile. Like anytime you go to a tournament, or it should never be that way. Because I've seen certain games where you can play in a tournament and everybody has a good time. But Field of Glory tournaments, for some reason, the players were all curmudgeon-y. They were all grumpy old fat men, right? Not saying that I wasn't an old fat man myself, but that's what you saw. You saw these guys sitting on their side of the table with their army, going, huh. And that just didn't sit well with me. I don't know if that was a symptom of the tournament scene, or if it was a symptom of the genre or the rule set, or coming from a DBA tournament style into a Field of Glory tournament style. I don't know. So that kind of turned me off as well. But finally, what really turned me off was I didn't like the set of rules. It was too complicated. That's why I don't like DBA. It uses terms that are not welcomed in my mind. They're not welcoming. And I can get into philosophy in a later time, But let me just say, I didn't like the rules. Okay. I love the army lists. I love the idea behind the rules. I just didn't like the implementation of the rules. So I said to myself, Mr. Everything, we got to keep looking, because Armati was too easy. Field of Glory was too... it wasn't player friendly. So I said, okay, what else do we got out there? Well, I ran across this set of rules called Hail Caesar. Well, Hail Caesar is a great set of rules. It's really, really good. Very good. For ancients and early medievals and biblical, probably. I don't really play Hittites or, whatever. But when it came to my Romans and my Carthaginians and my Macedonians, Hail Caesar works great. But when I started getting into the late medieval, like 100 Years' War, War of the Roses, that time frame, this rules falls apart. Handguns, not a thing. It doesn't, they are, but it doesn't really work well with the set of rules. Hail Caesar comes across, I should say, as a game, okay, like Monopoly, like checkers or chess. It comes across to me as a game and not a historical reenactment. Okay, I can take scenarios, I can make scenarios, I can play scenarios with this set of rules very easily, but it still was lacking, mainly because of the medievals. But I still love these set of rules. Don't get me wrong. These rules are awesome. Okay. Hail Caesar came out with a supplement called Age of Caesar. It came out with a lot of different supplements. This is just one of them. This is a bunch of scenarios based around Caesar being in Germany and his battles with the Germanic empires and his return to Rome, crossing the Rubicon and fighting other Romans. So this is a book kind of highlighting Caesar's battles. Good book, like it. But the scenarios in these books are the scenario in this book, I should say, is dumbed down. They're gamified, because remember I said Hail Caesar is a game and not a historical representation, and this is shoehorned into this set of rules. But it's still a good resource. If you like Hail Caesar, you're going to love Age of Caesar. If you like this period of time, it's a great supplement. But in my mind, I'm thinking it's still not good enough. Too hard, too easy. It's not hard per se. It's unforgiving. Let's see. I don't know the word I'm looking for. So I kept looking. And I found this set of rules called Sword Point, now in 2nd edition, by Gripping Beast. Okay, Sword Point. I noticed it used very similar basing as Hail Caesar. So if I already have a bunch of Hail Caesar armies, you can use them with Sword Point. Okay. So far, so good. Sword point goes from ancient and medieval, right? All the way from, well, I have three of these. I've got to the ends of the earth, which is all the battles and armies around Alexander and his Macedonians, right? Because it's really Alexander against this army, Alexander against that army, Alexander and the successors, and it goes into all the rules for all the different kingdoms and, armies in this period, which I find to be a valuable resource. And then this allowed me to go into the late Middle Ages, right? So if I wanted to, I could, Imperial, Renaissance Scottish, we're talking about War of the Roses English. So this goes late. Plus, it's got 100 Years' War, I do believe. Medieval Burmese, Christian Crusaders. Works great. And then the classic is your Republican Rome and Imperial Rome, I do believe. Every one of these right here is a different army list in this book. Early German, Polybian Roman, late Carthaginian, Ptolemaic, Thracians. This is the period that I'm really interested in. Okay. So now I've looked at three sets of rules, three sets of army lists, three ways everything is going to play. Plus, I looked at some other armies, right? Like Armati. I looked at DBM. I've looked at a few other rule sets as well. These are the ones that I settled on. Yeah, if I wanted to do a battle like Gaugamela, right? Using Hail Caesar, I couldn't do it. Hail Caesar is kind of designed for 28 millimeter on 40 millimeter bases. Same thing with sword point. And then I got to thinking, why do I have to shoehorn myself into 28 millimeter? I could do 15 millimeter, double my table size, and which effectively would double my table size, and I would be able to do all the phalanxes and all the Persians or whatever at Gaugamela. Companion cavalry and the Agema and the Hypaspits and elephants and scythe chariots and all that cool stuff, right? So I thought to myself, why don't I do it in 15 millimeter? Well, none of these games are designed for 15 millimeters except for Field of Glory. But that doesn't stop me from doing what I want to do. I'm an independent. I would like to say I'm right-wing, independent thought, bucking the system. I said, F you. So I said, okay, how am I going to do 15 millimeter in Ancients? And so I kind of looked at the Field of Glory basing and said, will that work and that's what these are right here. This is a Field of Glory Roman unit. This is probably 2 Field of Glory Roman units because the way Field of Glory is, they have very few bases. It's meant to be played on a 3-foot by 3-foot table. But not me. I'm playing on a 5x9. So I said, okay, so this is a Roman unit. 15 millimeter depth, 40 millimeter wide. I could do heavies. I could put 4 figures on a base. I could put mediums, 3 figures on a base, and lights. I could put 2 figures on a base. And then I could have cav. I could have uh, elephants, ballista, whatever I needed, right? But that's the way I'm going to base my Romans. 24 figures like that will be a Roman cohort. Now, pike phalanxes, 24 figures might not, because the Romans are going to fight like that, right? So a pike phalanx of only 2 ranks of depth probably isn't going to look right on the table. It probably needs to have at least a 3rd rank, and that's no problem. I'll just put another. I'll just put a 3rd rank on there, and then it'll look really good. Or 4 ranks, or whatever. I could just gradually build it up. One reason why I went this way, cost. This is a $10 unit. That's $10 of figures. If I was to get those figures in 28 mil, like Sword Point and Hail Caesar wants, that unit, or I should say 24 figures, is about $30. So this is about 1/3 the cost. So if I add an extra rank, I'm still cheaper. 15 millimeters has a good amount of detail on these models. You know, I don't know, it's blurry, but there's a good amount of detail on these figures. And I'll show those off here in a minute. I'll zoom in and we'll take a look at them. I did 2 cohorts in 1 day. It took me 1 day to paint 48 15 millimeter models. I was super excited. Okay, so now I'm thinking to myself, okay, we got it based for Field of Glory. Or I should say, I've got it based for me, however I want to do it. I'm just kind of cribbing or stealing the basing from Field of Glory. But I'm not going to build armies using points or anything like that. So then I thought, okay, so which of these rules am I going to use? Which rule set am I going to use? Sword Point, I feel like Sword Point is kind of, it's a good set of rules. It's a little bit more complicated than Hail Caesar, believe it or not. Even though the book is thinner, it's very particular about how you maneuver your units and where you get bonuses. And it has this thing called impetus, and those are callbacks from older rule sets from the 70s, and it has a really strong set of rules for small unit quantities. Like if I only did 1 division, Sword Point would be great. But if I wanted to do the entire Battle of Gaugamela, I think Sword Point would bog down. I don't know that for a fact, but I think it would bog down. So I'm going to aim towards Hail Caesar rules, but with a Field of Glory basing. Hail Caesar doesn't really care how many figures you have or how many bases you have. It's a Warlord Games game. So like Black Powder, Hail Caesar, very similar rules. Okay, so Hail Caesar and Black Powder are very similar games. Very similar to War Master is what I understand. They're streamlined. They're fast. They don't care how many bases you have. I personally do, because I want to represent standard, large, small type units based on how many bases they have. And then the type of figure or type of unit, like heavy, medium, or light will be the number of figures on the base. So that'll help kind of visualize. There's not a whole lot of guys there. There are just a bunch of peltasts or whatever. So I can use Hail Caesar rules with this basing style. Looking through sword point, though, it doesn't really matter about the base size either. They count bases. They count the number of bases for casualties, and I can do that too. If I've got a number of bases, I can boop. They care about how many bases are in the front rank, right? Like in this case, 2. And yeah, so I think I can do sword point using these bases as well. So my announcement is that I'm going to base it like DBA or Field of Glory. Okay, that's how it's going to get based. And then the rules I'm going to use is going to be probably Hail Caesar or Sword Point, most likely Hail Caesar, just because of the simplicity of the rules. But I'm going to crib or use Sword Point as a reference for my classical and my my Greek armies. Okay, now this is kind of an aside, just to let you know about, well, it's not an aside, it's actually part of the update. I went ahead and ordered from Old Glory. These are Old Glory models. Let me go ahead and, as I talk, let me zoom in. Oh yeah, Old Glory. These are Old Glory models. Just look at the detail on those. I am very happy with the way the shields came out, actually. I started them off with a hunter green, and then I went in and blended in a light commando green. Commando green. So hunter green highlighted, or I should say not even highlighted, it was blended with commando green. I think it came out really well. You can kind of see the detail on these models. These are good. This is a good amount of detail on a 15 millimeter model. I love Old Glory. Old Glory is awesome. These are Principes. I did 2 cohorts of Principes in the green shields. I decided to do green shields because I have not received my Little Big Men shield decals in yet, and all the shield decals that I ordered are like red, white, blue, and yellow. So there was no green. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to make a couple of cohorts green since I'm not going to have any shield decals for them yet. And this was kind of an experiment to see what this cohort would look like based up in the Field of Glory DBA. And then there's the static grass. You got to love it. In that method. Yeah, so these guys have red plumes. The other one I did has black plumes, but other than that, they're exactly the same. Actually, this musician has a cape, and the other musician doesn't. But that's mainly the only difference. Yeah, so the reason why I'm talking about Old Glory is there's a sale going on right now until the new year. If you're interested in any genre in 15 millimeter, go check out Old Glory 15s. They've got sales where you can get entire armies, complete your entire battle for a couple $100, right? I spent, okay, let me rephrase that. I remember this unit here at Old Glory would be $10. That's a cohort, $10. 5 cohorts, which is an army group or a group under one, we'll call it a brigade. It's a brigade like in Black Powder. 5 of them with the brigade commander, $50, right? $60 with the general, maybe some skirmishers. And you got a whole brigade for $60. But with the codes, you could get up to 50% off right now at Old Glory 15s. I cannot push it enough. I'm not a shill for them. I don't have a code. I don't get kickbacks. None of that. I'm just trying to be helpful to you guys. So, just letting you know, as a project update, I finished some roads, I finished some rivers. I've got another project that I'm going to work on, which is going to be flexible roads. I'm working on right there, painting you can see different colors on there that I've painted. I'm going to see how that affects the pile because those are fuzzy blankets. There's 2 of them. There's a lime and an OD, and I wanted to see which one looked best. So I did a test corner just to see what happens. I'll do that on a future video about those blankets. But I ordered Little Big Men shield decals for all my armies. I ordered, which happens to be Germans, Macedonians, Republican Romans, one more. Wait. Carthaginians, Republican Romans, Macedonians, and early Germans. Right, okay. So the early Germans, not so much. I think they're basically just wicker shields, so that's no problem. I just paint them. But so what I'm trying to say is I've put an order in for an entire army of Macedonians, early Germans, Carthaginians, and Republican Romans. Now, when you say entire army, what does that mean? Well, I based my army size on the Hail Caesar scenario, right? The very first scenario, which I kind of looked through all the scenarios, and most of them use the same army from the Romans army. It's the same in every battle, but there are a few differences here and there. So I kind of picked out the differences and added those as well. But basically, it's an overall commander, Caesar, and then his 3 commanders. And in each command, I'm going to say each one of those is a legion. I'm probably not right, but there's going to be 3 legions, and then each legion is going to have, it's probably a maniple cohort. There's probably 3 cohorts. So one thing is a legion. Each cohort has 5 maniples, except they're not the manipular. Basically, they have 2 principes, 2 hastati, and 1 triarii. And then either a ballista or a skirmisher, and then some allied like Gaelic cavalry or something like that. So there's going to be 3 groups like that. So that winds up being about 15 formed units, and then with some odds and ends thrown in as well. And so I basically took that idea and then put that onto my other armies just to get a starter set. Plus, I ordered about 10 units per side in the American War of Independence. just FYI. So I ordered Continentals and British. And that entire thing, okay, so think about that. 15 units plus odds and ends. So if I count 15 plus like 2 skirmishers and like 2 cav and a ballista. Okay, so there's at least 20 units in an army, right? 20 units in an army. Which, you know, that sounds about right, because 20 units comes out to about $200, right? So I'm going to get an entire army for $200. But because I ordered Macedonians, early Germans, Carthaginians, and Romans, and then about half an army of British and half an army of Continentals, it came out to about $1,000, right? But with the code that I used for the Christmas code, 50% off, $500. I got 5 whole armies for $500. You can't beat that. I strongly recommend it. Go do it. Make it happen. Okay. And that's basically it. That's all I really wanted to say. This is the first video letting you know that I'm getting ready to get started making about 4 different projects. I've already started my Napoleonic project, 10 millimeter, 15 millimeter, 13.5 millimeter. I got all kinds of problems with that. Working on that. I think I'm going to go 10 millimeter Pendragon and just say, screw Warlord. We'll see. And then got my Agincourt / 100 Years War project, Burgundians, War of the Roses kind of deal. I don't know how I'm going to do that. But basically, I'm just calling it my medieval project. I think I'm going to do that in 28s because I think I want my battlefield to be smaller, more compact. And I think I'm definitely not going to use Hail Caesar or Field of Glory for that. I think I'm just going to use Sword Point for that specifically, because I think a smaller, more compact battle in the Middle Ages, having those additional command roles or impetus points and stuff like that, I think will be manageable on the table, and maneuverability on a 5x9 I think is okay with the size of the battles that I'm going to do in Napoleonic, or not Napoleonics, in medievals. I probably could have got away with it in American War of Independence, but I decided not to. I'm going to go 15s American War of Independence, 15 Ancients, 28 Medievals, and 10 Napoleonics. So I'm building terrain for all of that. You pretty much got my basing out of the way for all of that. The only project I haven't touched on is my medievals, and that will be coming in the next few days. All right, thanks for coming out and checking out this video, and I will see you in the next one.